Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me as always is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, say hi.
Hello.
What have you been up to?
Do you know what? I really can't remember. Other than it being Father's Day yesterday, I had such a good day. It blew my mind. I did see a red kite flying outside my house, which
Nice.
is the closest it's. I was going to say
No eagles again.
No eagles this time. But I was about to say something very silly. That the closest the red kite has ever been to my house is when it was flying above, which is obvious. But I never get red kites this close to my house, so it was really cool to see that. Father's Day was wicked. Really nice. I've been given some beasts of the Mesozoic money.
Oh
yeah. Yeah, David Silver, I'm after your Linthoraptor now.
Something to go in the cupboard there.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a whole diorama with it. I just need to
nice.
order it so that I know the size scale to go with, because I'd like to put like a cliff. It's gonna be kind of Gobi Desert-esque cliff. I might see if I can recycle one of these old Protoceratops toys that I've got. It's just a rigid plastic, unarticulated model, and I would probably take a router or a Dremel to it so I can open it, make it look like a carcass type thing.
Nice.
And we went down Woolacombe in the evening. We went looking at all the jellyfish, and we picked up some plastic off the beach, which I do have a bit of a bugbear about, actually, to say. Someone went down there, obviously had a very nice Father's Day, took their kids out to play with the kite. The kite broke, and do you know what they did with it?
Probably stuffed it in the sand and walked away.
That would have been worse, I guess. No, I don't know. Either way, it's equally as bad ecologically, but I mean,
Buried it.
morally, ethically, what this person did is took it to this post on Woolacombe that says no dogs on this side of the beach.
Yeah.
And they tied it to that and left it. And literally meters away is a bin. Why do people do that?
It's a whole couple of more steps.
I don't know why people do that. You would have had to walk past the bin to get to your car. Like, I really don't get that mentality. If it breaks, I'm sorry it's broken, but put it in the bin.
Yeah.
So I picked it up and I took it to the bin. I had to pick up some rubbish as well. Took it to the bin. Our daughter was just having a whale of a time with a stick, so she didn't pick up any plastic, but that's fine. Yeah. Other than that, I've not been doing a great deal. I'm scratching my brain to think. I tell you what I have got though today. These aren't new. I'm going to take my trainer off because we're not sponsored by the make, but in my sock, it's got pteranodons on. It's very brightly coloured, and it's got
very
pteranodons
nice
on, which I thought was really cool. So I've been wearing those today. So
I'm wearing Mandalorian socks.
Mandalorian socks.
Nothing to do with this whatsoever.
What about you? I'll stop rambling on about nonsense stuff.
Well, I've got this. I'm doing show and tell again. I've got a cuddly toy ammonite.
It's really cool.
This was made by my lovely other half when we were driving up to my parents' place in North Wales. That's how long it took. Whilst being stuck in traffic, she was able to make an entire ammonite.
Wow.
Yeah, we were in one heck of a traffic jam.
I didn't realise the traffic was that bad.
Yeah, it's really cool. So we've nicknamed him Gary. He's Gary the Ammonite. That was my Father's Day gift. Is a cuddly toy ammonite because he's the same colour as SpongeBob's snail.
Cool.
So yeah, she made that, which is really cool. I know it works really nice.
Yeah, no, that's really great.
We ended up going to the Liverpool Museum as well whilst we were up there.
Cool.
They've got a lovely Quetzalcoatlus as you walk in.
Yes, they
sort
do.
Of flying
smaller specimen though.
Yeah, it could be bigger. We work
Could be bigger.
Could be bigger.
Liverpool. Good.
To be honest, that's the only place that I've been in the UK that's got a Quetzalcoatlus.
As far as I'm aware.
So we also were going to go to an exhibition that was in there about bees. which would have been really cool. Apart from we, paid for and everything, and we went to the desk at our allotted time. Oh yeah, no, sorry, it's closed. There's technical issues.
Oh, behave.
Can you come back another day?
Should have said, "Oh, behave."
No, we can't come back another day. So we went, okay, we'll get a refund on that. And I don't know why, but in my head, I just imagined that inside of that room, there's just a giant jar of bees and somebody had knocked them over or something and they're all flying around.
Fucking killer bees.
But no, we did that. And
someone stole the honey.
Yeah. So that was something. But yeah, that's about the most that I've done this week.
Oh,
I'm quite happy with my little
the ammonite is cool.
Ammonite, yeah.
And I can't wait to get. I believe there's a waiting period, but I can't wait to get that raptor. But I just spoke.
Oh right, I was going to say, have you asked her to make you a raptor or something?
No, the raptor, the Beast of the Mesozoic Creative Beast Studios raptor.
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
That will look quite nice, and we'll have to somehow expand our frame here so that people can see it.
Yeah.
But you should point out the two things above you as well.
Yeah. So
out of frame perfectly.
Out of frame for the moment until things are sorted out. But these are really special, actually. I have a third one upstairs, which is an Amma tiger, which is one that I worked with. But these two, when I was like putting my heart and soul into trying to work with tigers. I have a couple friends in America, in the States, called Erin and Jenna, who work with tigers, and they sent these over to me years ago. One is that one's a Malayan tiger, and this one is a Sumatran tiger.
Oh, nice!
So really cool to have.
Yeah. Well, that's not bad. It's another addition to the cupboard. Well, yeah. Let's move into our news for this week, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news. Aaron, what are we looking at?
Well, every week, the weird and wonderful world of natural history opens up an embarrassment of riches. That was a very Donald Trump. Embarrassment of riches when it comes to news and interesting topics to talk about. And though we here at the Natural History Cupboard are obviously a small team, it is our aim to keep you guys, our fellow cupboard dwellers, up to date on the good, the exciting, and the odd coming out of the natural world. So let's open up the Natural History Cupboard newsreel and dive on into some of the ones we've got listed for you. And it's you first today, isn't it?
Yes. So from the BBC News, a rather sad one to start off with. He may not be particularly known to some of our international viewers, but TV presenter and conservationist Simon Cowell has died. And that's not Simon Cowell, the irritating TV personality who tells people that they can't sing, even though I don't think I've ever heard him sing. So that would be interesting. But this is Simon Cowell, unfortunately, has the same name. He was a TV presenter and, well, basically a wildlife rescuer, doing a lot of wildlife rescues in the UK. So everything from small birds and badgers. Wildlife Action Fund, I believe, was the charity. It's still going. It's still there, and it's being kept on by his daughter. And still doing exactly what he was doing with it. I used to really like watching the TV series that he was on.
I recognise him, but I don't recognise his name, embarrassingly.
Oh, right. He unfortunately died of lung cancer. He had a rather severe bout of lung cancer at the age of 72. So, unfortunately, another really good conservationist taken far too soon.
My one is also from BBC, and I suppose it's a bit of it's good news on a human front for a change, and that's Native Americans see omen in Yellowstone's rare white bison calf.
Oh,
yeah. So I take it a little bit of issue in rare white bison. I understand that the birth is what they mean, that the birth of a white bison is rare. But I don't like the idea of these colour morphs being seen as
Yeah.
rare species, you know. But it's an exciting time for many of the native tribes of the Great Plains, including the Sioux, the Cherokee, the Comanche, and the Navajo. As a white bison calf with black eyes and black hooves has been photographed. Why is that important? Well, the event signifies change, and a celebration is to be held later this month, proving once again how important the natural world is to humans and our culture. In this case, the culture of the Native Americans or the
So
First
it's-
Nation people's spirituality.
So it's not an albino. It's
No,
just
it's
a
not
colour
an albino, just a colourmorph. Well, albinism is a mutation of
Yeah.
colourmorph, but it's to do with one of the kind of primary prophets of their collection of beliefs.
Oh, that's really cool.
I thought it was cool, so I thought I'd mention.
We'll go from Middle America to Middle Earth now. Whereas from IFL Science, there has been a new species of fish that has been named after the Eye of Sauron.
Is it
It
great,
is
lidless, and wreathed in flame?
yeah, it's a burning fish. No, it's so essentially it's a fish that has a black line, but it looks like the sort of slit pupil that appears in the Peter Jackson version of Sauron.
Like appears in some snakes.
Yeah, but it's
but we went with Sauron's
it
eye.
looks quite good. And to be honest, I love the fact that someone's a Tolkien nerd and gone, "Yep, we'll have that, and we'll call it after that."
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Well, my next article comes to us from New Scientist, and this is how dodo de-extinction is helping to rescue the extraordinary pink pigeon. The type of news I want to hear is just how de-extinction can protect extant species struggling to survive. Because if you remember back to our episode with Professor Andrew Pask, I started off that interview like I admitted to him that like I'm interested in the science of it, but I'm not 100% for it. By the end of the interview, I was completely converted.
Yeah.
Because there's so much scope for how it can help the world, and the animals that they're talking about are animals that the world in terms of environment and such, actually misses. But yeah, this article brings exactly the type of news I want to hear. The technology used to bring back dodos from extinction could be used to bolster and increase the endangered species. And one such example is actually a relative of the dodo, and that's the pink pigeon, which is also not just a relative of the dodo, but a fellow Mauritian inhabitant, which is where the dodo came from. So a really, 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 really hyper cool bit of news, I think. It's hoped that through genomic conservation and de-extinction practices, the species could avoid the extinction altogether.
Well, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Well, another one to basically help fight off extinction here.
Cool.
And this is from Prague Zoo, who we've talked to in the past about about pangolins. Well, this time it's Przewalski's wild horse or Przewalski's wild horse. How do you say it?
Przewalski.
Przewalski. Yeah. Basically, they've been releasing some captive bred Przewalskis back into Kazakhstan.
That's because they're into the city of Prague.
Not into the. So they've released one stallion and 6 mares. They were sent to central Kazakhstan, a part of a reintroduction program, and this marks the return of the species to this particular area, where it's been locally extinct for many years. Before they are fully released into the wild, they'll spend approximately a year in a large acclimatization enclosure where they can habituate to their local conditions. So really good to see, and I think Przewalski's wild horse, they've basically been one of these success stories of conservation, a bit like the oryx that we've talked about in the past as well, that zoos have really found it, I say, easy to breed them. They are. I mean,
the oryx has not been without challenge.
No.
They don't deal well with damp conditions.
But Przewalski's, I can't think of a large collection that doesn't have them realistically. And they've been bred in zoos all over the world and now being reintroduced in huge numbers back out into the wild. So
yeah, I would definitely in the list of species that you can use to shout the merit of good functional zoos, Przewalski's would be up there, Oryx and Wysant as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So my final article from the newsreel this week is from Live Science, and that is that Bornean clouded leopard family filmed in the wild for first time ever.
Oh.
Yeah, really cool. So trail cameras set up in the Bornean National Park of Tanjung Puting have captured for the first time ever a family of clouded leopards from the region. The footage records a mother and her two cubs incredibly close, with one cub even coming up for like a selfie. Like actually, you can see the footage is on Live Science and it's gorgeous, but you just see this little clouded leopard cub looking into the camera like this. Really, really cool. These cameras were set up by the Orangutan Foundation and are a positive sign that the species is breeding in the area.
That's really cool.
And that just about wraps it up for this week's installment of the Natural History Covered newsreel. Guys, if you have stories or topics of interest that you think should be covered here, send them in to us through any of the usual channels like social media, email, and you may just see your chosen topical news article covered here or in the main topics, which we're about to discuss now. Gareth, what is the main topic this week?
Well, it's not great news. It's there's been a few times where I've gone to do a news article, and events get in the way, and I change what I'm going to do it. So I was all geared up to do a completely different one, which I will come back to at some point. But I looked on my phone the other day and saw a wonderful, I say wonderful, incident involving a police car and a cow. Which sounds like the start of a bad joke, and to be honest, it was. Well, yeah, I mean, I've been putting pictures up, obviously, behind us as we talk of different bits and pieces, but I'm not going to put pictures up of this obviously happening because it's pretty horrific in some ways. So Saturday night in a part of Surrey. There was a cow on the loose, essentially a calf.
I was going to say
it wasn't a full-grown one.
Old calf, yeah.
So it was an larger size, but still nowhere near, adult cow roaming around. And I'd wandered into sort of an urban area, and the police were called out because it apparently had damaged a car, and apparently was worrying some people. So the footage that was going around and is still going around on social media and different things is the choice by the particular police officers at the time to ram the cow with their car and send it skidding across the ground, and then sort of driving in quickly and sort of not parking on top of it, but sort of pinning it slightly with the car, the front of the car.
He hit it not once but twice.
Yeah, so this has obviously caused a lot of outrage from people in the animal care community and anyone who doesn't want to see an animal run over. Because this choice was made for the simple reason that apparently they had tried calling some local vets, but had had no luck, and they feared for the safety of the public, which I can understand in some ways, but I still think they went about this the wrong way by hitting it with their car. They basically then had it taken to a vet, and surprisingly, it had actually relatively minor injuries.
I think
something
it was bruised, wasn't it?
Bruising, and there was some cuts, and I would imagine probably a good dose of feeling like, what the hell just happened to me?
Probably a high amount of cortisol in it.
Yes. So yeah, this particular cow had been sent skittled across the road in an effort to stop it from getting in front of cars and having the same thing happen, presumably at a higher speed, and also possibly, I don't want to use the word attacking the public, because it's a cow and it's it's not out to hunt people down. But the part of it that I felt was worthy of talking about is this is not the first time that I've heard of certainly police in the UK, because I can't speak to police in other countries about this, dealing with animals and not
in a completely inappropriate fashion.
not even inappropriate, just a lack of, I would say, appropriate training. Now, I'd like to preface this with saying that I think the police do an incredibly tough job, and I would not want to do their job.
No.
And I'm saying that as, they deal with drunk, abusive, horrible people in horrible situations,
Yeah.
and they are highly skilled and highly trained at what they do in stopping situations like that. But I think we have to realize that they're not animal specialists. And speaking as people who are animal specialists, that would have not been the way I would have dealt with that cow being on the loose.
No, and I can think of so many ways that just Joe Public would have dealt with that cow better than deciding to hit it with a car twice.
I mean, you could have used your car
For sure.
to basically have herded it into.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because there is another car in the background of the clip. I'm surprised they didn't use the cars in sort of like a pincering, sort of maneuvering it around, so you sort of corralled it into one area, and then you could potentially get some sort of rope around it, or keep it pinned there until you can get someone there.
Yeah.
So apparently they couldn't get a hold of any vets to be able to come and tranquilize this animal or whatever. They couldn't get a hold of a farmer because they didn't know what farmer's cattle it was. Personally, I think that they could have just called. Well, I say
any farmer would have been any livestock farmer would have had some experience that would have helped them.
Yeah.
But failing that, it was Surrey, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Call the local zoo as well.
Yeah.
There would be someone there that would have experience with large animals that could have advised at the very least.
Yeah, and would have possibly had the equipment to have collected it up. And presumably after this incident occurred, because this is all you see, you don't see any more than this. How did they transport that cow from that point on? Did somebody stay with it? Did the vet then turn up? That's a little bit up in the air. They've also asked, and this is the bit I don't like, is they've also asked that anyone who has any footage. Now, I'd like to point out that they have referred themselves to the independent police watchdog. So they're basically doing the correct things. They're basically trying to learn from their mistake.
The police officer himself is referred.
Well, the police officer himself has actually been stood down from
frontline. I know he's been taken off of frontline duty. Yeah.
So the police are referring themselves to their own watchdog to basically check that they could have done things better. Which I definitely think they could have done things better. Yeah. But yes, they are sort of doing things properly. Personally, I've had stories from other people who've dealt with the police and wildlife and animal issues where there have been snakes, for instance. This is my absolute favorite one in that a royal python was found on a street in a town that somebody had dumped in a bucket, in like a bag, like a cloth bag. The police had been called, and they had taken several people down there to go and look at this thing in a bag. And at this point, they then sort of backed off of what it was. Somebody had got a bucket and bravely put the bucket over this snake.
This royal python.
Oh, yeah. Yes. A royal python, the largest and most lethal of snakes in the world. There had also been an armed police officer present as well.
These are like the lapdogs of the snake world.
Now, I know that the person who then came and dealt with this is a little old lady who basically turned up, sort of moved her way, presumably through this crowd of onlooking policemen, with one of them with some sort of weapon, to then pick up the snake and walk away with it. So it's not that the police don't know how to do their job when it comes to animals. I believe a lot of the time they've not been given or offered the training, or are not linked up with, and I reckon they probably are in some areas, and it's going to come down to individual areas and how good they are at doing things. linked up with local wildlife groups or animal collections like zoos, or even just people who have some sort of expertise. If they'd have had the number of a local farm vet or whatever more to call, granted these sort of events are relatively rare,
Yeah.
but it is something that I think a bit of preparation might actually help in the future.
Having a protocol in place with
Yeah.
a network of a support network in place. It's like I just want to say because I find the whole thing horrific and at the same time laughable. But I would never dream of telling the police officer how to do his job in any
No.
other arena. And I completely mirror the sentiments that you kind of started off with about the job that they do. Just wow. But I do feel we have a grounds on which to kind of stand up and say, "Yeah, that's not an appropriate way to handle an animal
Yeah.
escape of any kind. It's certainly not an appropriate way to restrain an animal by using a car as a weapon." Um,
Well, I think the best example of this is a couple of. Do you remember a good couple of weeks ago now? There were two horses from one of the sort of horse guard parades things in London
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
that escaped and basically freaked out and ran through the middle of London. One of them had a horrific gash on it where it had sort
Yep.
of, I think it had bashed into a fence or something like that.
Yeah, or
They had people, members of the public,
Mm.
helping the police and people around that area to corral those horses
Yep.
and calm them down. They called in horse experts and they basically sorted them out. At no point, and I can't imagine what would have happened if a police officer had gone, well, I'll stop the horses and rammed them with
oof,
a car.
yeah.
And unfortunately, I think the other minor aspect of this is a horse worth a lot of money and also seen as somehow more elevated than a
Yeah.
cow.
Cow
And
food.
yeah, in my mind, cows and horses are on the same playing field. They're both really nice, large animals. Um, but yeah, I think there's a little bit of that sort of, well, it's not on that sort of level. So
I think they need training
yeah,
is the key.
yeah,
Training is the key. And I think at no point was that more evident than when they were basically stopped in their place by a little toy crocodile head a few
well,
weeks
there you
ago.
go. There's
Like
there's the other example of it.
I just think a little bit of training for them and having a concrete protocol in place with numbers to call for a support network that involve a vet, a livestock farmer,
Yeah, a local
and
zoo
like I
or
say,
animal collection.
if we're talking Surrey, I might be wrong, but I think Chessington
Yeah,
and Chessington do have large ungulate species. So again, there will be someone there who could advise on that.
there is one final thing I'd like to mention, and it's ultimately one thing is massively at fault here, and it's not the police, it's not the farmer or actually whoever's farm obviously this thing got out of. If you've got fences, make sure the fences are in good working order
Hmm.
because the cow got hit.
Do farmers have to do perimeter fence walks like zoos
I
do?
don't think so, but I think they've got to have a certain level of safety to them because, well, if the cow gets on the road and your car plows into it, you can sue the farmer for not
Yeah,
maintaining
of
his
course,
fences.
of course.
But the biggest overall thing is the government. The government have continuously on year cut and cut police
Mhm.
budgets. They've made them do more for less with less people, and I'm not surprised when things like this happen because the police wouldn't have the time or the effort or the money to put into training for stuff like this. So ultimately, I think the ultimate like big
The
issue of it
the
lies at the
burden of
feet of the government.
responsibility, yeah,
Yeah.
on a government that has spent 14 years cutting police funds,
Yeah,
among other things.
and I would say we're no fans of the current government here in the podcast.
No.
Uh, in any way, shape, or form. And it's rare that we would ever say anything remotely in their sort of favour. And this is certainly one of them.
They've also sold the farmers up
Yeah.
the river with the lies they told to get them on board for Brexit.
So yeah, bit of an interesting one. I would say don't go and look up the video of it because it's pretty horrific, especially if you don't want to see a cow being hit by a car. It's not nice. But yeah, ultimately, it would be lovely to have the police getting, that sort of training, or even just having the links to being able to do stuff like that. And I would imagine there would be some forces that do exactly that. But ultimately, I think the blame on all of this lies with the government. So yeah. So yeah.
Agreed.
Right. Well, should we pick things up a little bit and head into our creature feature?
We could put a spring in our step, but you might find that spring isn't there.
Oh.
There is a point to that reference.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, what are we looking at?
Well, it's worth mentioning right off the bat, actually, that this creature feature, is a suggestion that was made to us by one of our previous interviewees, who was kind enough to spend some time with us on the podcast, and that's Dr. Andrew Pask. So thank you for doing that. Sorry, we're only just getting around to it. I was going to say, this is also
you making up for having completely lost his suggestion.
There is that. Yeah, I did lose your suggestion, so we're just getting so sorry. But this creature feature is brought to us by Dr. Andrew Pask from Tiger. Now, in this episode, I will be taking us back in time and space to a land that you are familiar with, although probably not at the same era. I would have thought.
No, I don't. I'm not. I don't think I'm that old. Maybe. Who knows?
No comment. But we're going to be hopefully observing a species that, whilst I would say the general public usually wouldn't really know what this animal is, it would still look very, very, very familiar to them, I would say. This week we're talking about Procoptodon. Now, what is Procoptodon? Procoptodon. Firstly, say the name correctly. It's a good question. Like I say, it's an animal that's going to be familiar to us, but probably you won't know what it is. Now, Procoptodon, its name is Greek in origin. Do you know what it means?
Well, something tooth.
The Dom is a giveaway there, isn't it?
Yeah, that very much. So before.
Very good.
No, copter. No.
That was really good, actually. It's forward-facing tooth.
Oh, there you go.
It doesn't really give a very good description of the animal, I think, because unless you're going to walk up to it, like take the time machine back in time and walk up to it, sorry, mate, open the mouth and have a look, you're not really going to get a good idea of what this species is if you were to stumble across it. So a better description of these guys is probably giant short-faced kangaroo.
Yeah.
So that is what a Procoptodon is, a giant short-faced kangaroo. And the species that we're going to look at mostly throughout this is actually the biggest one of all of them. So, yeah, we're talking pretty giant. Now, I want us to envision ourselves in New South Wales. I guess we'll be in the northwest corner of that state too. Have you ever been to New South Wales?
Very briefly.
Very briefly. Did you ever see any Procoptodon?
No.
So you're not that old. Okay.
Saw kangaroos, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, that was what I was about to ask. What is the largest marsupial you'll see?
What's the red kangaroo?
The red kangaroo, yeah, in New South Wales for sure.
It's, well, the whole of Australia.
This is a question from me to you though. There are places, or at least I was under the impression there are places where the red kangaroo isn't, but the grey kangaroos are.
Yes.
So in those states, what I mean is that in those states,
you say you're picturing us in the northwestern corner,
northwest corner of New South Wales.
So you'd be out into the edge of the outback there. So yes, you'd find reds there, but you won't find reds sort of on the other side of the dividing ranges. Remember we talked about last week, the dividing range down the spine of the east coast of Australia. On the Sydney side of that, so the eastern side of that, you're
Mhm.
probably just going to have Western grey kangaroos, which makes
Yeah.
no sense when you say Western grey. And,
Yeah,
and there's the
huge.
Eastern grey as well,
Yeah.
and the Wallaroo and stuff like that. So
The
yeah,
Wallaroo, yeah.
yeah.
Which people, when I used to work with Western grey kangaroos,
Mhm.
and when I used to talk to visitors about them and about marsupials in general, but specifically wallaroos and sorry, wallabies and kangaroos, no one believed me. Not a single visitor
there's
would
a
believe me
Wallaroo.
that there's a wallaroo. They thought I was just making it up.
We've hybridized the two and made a Wallaroo.
Yeah, so yeah, so yeah, but yeah, yeah, the red kangaroo is the largest one that you're going to see in New South Wales, and it is, as Gareth said, it's the largest one in Australia anyway. Now we can, like I said, we can quite rightly describe that as a large kangaroo. It's the largest species of extant kangaroo after all, but just how large is a big red?
Oh, they're big.
A big red, by the way, is what we call the large males.
Will it be a boomer?
A boomer, yeah.
A boomer is what you call.
A couple of things.
Just realised the connection there.
Yeah.
Yeah. A boomer is a big red kangaroo, and they
Mhm.
can get easily 6 foot in height if they stretch up as well. They're even taller, and
I was gonna
especially
say,
when
yeah.
they're all henched up
When
and
they're all doing
just
their Arnold
pure
Schwarzenegger
muscle,
impression,
and
yeah.
it's you're just like, oh, okay.
So the records that I have noted down are they can measure 2.8 meters in length and 2.1 meters in height. So that's about 9 foot long and 7 foot tall when they reach up.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So they're big. They're big boys because they can also weigh up to 90 kilograms,
Yeah.
which is 198 pounds. So yeah, huge. So when we think of the red kangaroo and we understand like kind of the measurements there, if they were walking into a boxing or WWE ring, how do you think Procoptodon measures up?
Considerably bigger.
Yeah, so the one we're talking about mostly is Procoptodon galia.
Yeah.
Now that's the largest or it's the largest kangaroo, but it's the largest of the so-called giant short-faced kangaroos. Now he or she, I should say, would have stood at about 2.7 meters tall, so nearly 9 foot tall, nearly 2 foot taller than a large male red, and weighed somewhere in the region of 240 kilograms. So
that's pretty hefty. That's on a
yes.
par with a lion.
Yeah, yes, it is. About 530 pounds, so maybe even just eking out a lion. Maybe.
Certainly about the same weight of a sea lion, because I can always remember they max out, a Californian sea lion max out somewhere around 220, 230.
Either way, this roof, the Procoptodon,
Mm.
it completely dwarfs the reds. So yeah. So whilst we fire up the cupboard time machine, allow me to offer a brief description.
Did you fit the time machine bits in this, have you?
I haven't finished doing it, so we might actually end up in the wrong place.
Oh dear.
Yeah, there's still a few loose pieces. But to describe them very briefly, Procoptodons were, to put it simply, they just look like a kangaroo, a big kangaroo with a short face.
Kangaroo that's hit the wall.
Yeah. Yes. I never thought of that, but yes, they do look like that. In the paleo reconstructions, they do look like
They
that.
always look grumpy as well.
They do. I was about to say they look moody, whereas at least kangaroos, even though you know that the males are very moody, they don't look it. They look quite happy, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, until they raise up and they're kicking your dog, and you decide, oh, I'm gonna go defend my dog against this kangaroo, and then you're like, "Aah!" It's huge. Yeah. So this is like the Godzilla of kangaroos. But they would, even though we're saying like it looks like like Gareth said, looks like a kangaroo that's hit a wall too fast and squashed its face in, you would recognize it immediately as a kangaroo. They're not so different in how they look. Procoptodon goliath specifically would, however, be easily identified by its size because, like I say, it is just that much bigger than anything that we know of in that group. It would have essentially just stood head and shoulders over any of its relatives, ancient and contemporary alike. So Procoptodon's head would also betray it. As we said, it looks like it's run into a wall. It's quite short. It also, that face is quite flat too, which again is in line with what you said about that meeting a wall too fast. Its eyes point forwards; they're not off to the side. And the Procoptodon, where I often say that kangaroos look like a theropod crossed with a deer or a deer raptor, Procoptodons look like a theropod crossed with a rabbit or a hare. So like
Yeah.
a Lagomoraptor.
Saying that, it does. Their short face is far more rabbit-like than a kangaroo's face.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting mashups that we like to imagine. On their hands, there was another difference, an adaptation for the type of diet that they'd sustain themselves on. They actually had 2 extended fingers with large claws, which would help them grasp onto branches and browse.
Like a koala, so
Yeah.
like double thumbs.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
the koalas have
They're
2 thumbs.
extended. Yeah. So yeah, it would help them forage. And on their feet, they had only, and this is where it's quite interesting, I find, because kangaroos and wallabies, they have, I'm saying this to you, you already know, you've worked with them too, but they have 3 toes, okay?
4 actually.
They have 4?
So they've got the big toe, the big central toe, the one on the outside, and then 2 that are like joined together, like 2 tiny.
Oh yeah, that's what I was getting
grooming
onto.
claws.
That's what I was going to get onto. So yeah, quite right. I was
3/4.
Yeah, so the way I was going to describe it is slightly different. So they've got, forgive me, I'm going to go with this and then you can correct me, but I think we're on the same track anyway. So they've got 3, if you look at their feet, it looks like they've got 3 toes. One on the outside, which offers balance. One on the inside, the big claw that would eviscerate you if it kicked you in the gut. That's actually the reason why the skin on the chest is so much thicker on the chest than it is on the back, because when they kick each other, it would be pretty evolutionary redundant to have thin evisceratable skin.
Oh yeah.
When you evolve to kick each other. So yeah, this one on the outside, that one's for balance. This one on the inside, other than for kicking the hell out of each other, is for grip and for speed. And then this one on the inside has 2 claws attached to it. And they are, as Gareth said, that's the grooming toe. That's how they...
Almost all marsupials have that same arrangement of 2 little claws joined together.
Yeah.
Grooming.
Yeah. But Procoptodon's different. Why do you think they're different?
Because somebody's got to be different.
Yeah, somebody's got to be different. If you looked at Procoptodon's feet, you would be forgiven for thinking they look a little bit horse-like. It's very much like a hoof. 1 toe hitting the ground and like a hoof kind of arrangement. So it's like a kangaroo with hooves, kind of. So yeah, it looks very much like a horse's foot. Now, whilst the physical appearance would set it apart, so too would Procoptodon's behaviour, because you'd likely see some more recognizable modern species kind of bounding along, jumping on the two hind legs, or some of them doing this very cool kind of 5-limb form of locomotion, where basically the weight is through the forelimbs, so through the front paws and the tail, and the back limbs kind of swing like a pendulum forward, hit the ground, and then they move, and then they swing. They're constantly swinging those back legs behind them.
Do you know that the kangaroo's form of locomotion is the most, not the 5-legged walking thing, the jumping is the most efficient form of animal movement in the world?
I didn't know that, but it makes sense, because I remember when I was working with wallabies, looking into how the ligaments and tendons function with the muscles, because I am a bit of a physiology kind of biology nerd, and I used to do my degree was in sports science type stuff. So yeah, I was just a little bit interested in muscles and stuff. And it was
on
very
the downstroke, it charges for the upstroke, and on the upstroke, it sort of basically they have to put in half the amount of effort. that they would to be able to jump, because every time they go down onto the ground, their legs just spring them back up without them having to do anything.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That would be pretty efficient.
So
Yeah,
it's incredibly efficient, and means that they can go for absolute miles without, like having to
without
really.
breaking a sweat.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Well,
Mm.
kangaroos can't
I
swim.
was just about to say, funny enough, they can't sweat. That's why they lick themselves profusely to help them cool down. If you ever see a kangaroo licking itself a lot, that's why. Very important in captivity that they're given things like sprinklers or big water bowls that they can kind of splash themselves in, because even in rainy, wet Devon, it does get hot enough in the summer
Yeah.
for like the kangaroos to suffer a little bit. So yeah, it's just an interesting side note there. So yeah, with Procoptodon, it's slightly different. We don't think that they did any of that bounding. So yeah, the actual form of locomotion for Procoptodon has been hotly debated for a long time. But we don't. The general consensus, as I say, the general consensus is that we don't think they bounded. We don't think they were able to. So you've got the contemporary kind of couple modes of locomotion that we've been over for kangaroos around today, but with Procoptodon, we think that despite some research suggesting that they were the heaviest animals ever to hop in that manner, there is actually like I say, general consensus disagrees. For starters, its weight does not lend itself well to a hopping motion undertaken by a speeding kangaroo. It would cause a lot of stress on those ligaments and tendons that we've spoken about already.
230 kilos at speed, yeah.
So we think that would have caused injury very easily. And in addition to this, the shape and size of Procoptodon's hips would have meant that, how shall we put it? Procoptodon had a lot of junk in the trunk. It had a rather large derriere. Yeah. So we don't think that it had the hips to allow it to do that. So in addition to that, the feet are, like I say, they're hoofed, which is kind of typical for
imagining this
ungulates. Yeah, you're not going to be able to put that pressure through it. So all this kind of actually suggests that they might have actually had a bipedal form of walking.
I'm getting, like I say, in my head, I'm getting, if you put a kangaroo in a pair of stilettos and
Yeah.
watched it very gingerly, like walking.
It probably. I tell you what would be more accurate, I reckon, than stilettos is stilts. I think it would have been walking like on stilts, like that.
Okay.
That's what it sounds like, really. So to further support this line of thinking, the leg components are indicative of actually a far more upright stance as well. So whilst kangaroos, like I say, they have an almost theropod kind of look to them, shall we say old-fashioned theropod?
Yeah, quite
like
old-fashioned.
Victorian theropod. But with Procoptodon, they would have been much more upright than your red kangaroos and grey kangaroos around today.
Slightly more terrifying in that aspect.
A little bit. It certainly would be standing a lot taller, wouldn't it? And like I say, it would just be alternating the body weight through the feet 1 foot at a time. So yeah, that's a behavioural way we can tell them apart. But further to that, there's also the dietary habits of these guys. So whilst our kind of contemporary kangaroos would be more or less busy in themselves with grazing for the most part, Procoptodon would be concentrating on browse. Like I said, with those fingers being able to grip branches and selecting the most delectable leaves from the branches of the trees and shrubs that it would feed on. They would also have held these really securely, like I said, which means that they would be able to specifically pick and choose the leaves that they're eating. And because of this, and the fact that actually red kangaroos and other kangaroos actually existed at the same time as Procoptodon, there is a bit of a time overlap there. That means that they didn't have to compete. They didn't directly compete over food
No, I
resources.
can't imagine they're doing the same thing in the same place.
Yeah. The idea that they were browsers is further supported by the morphology of the skull. It was far more robust skeletally, but it also had far more anchor kind of points for these big muscles that they would have used to chew. On top of that, the wear and tear found on fossilized teeth actually suggests that they were actually chewing on much tougher plant material than the grasses that our contemporary kangaroos would have been on today. There's actually kind of like what we were talking about with the woolly mammoth, that tooth that we brought in for the Asian elephant episode. You'd be able to see you'd be able to see the wear and tear on the tooth, but also be able to tell from that wear and tear the sort of plants that they'd be eating. So really kind of cool insight into how they live. Now we're going to stick with New South Wales for a moment. Gareth, can you describe what we'd see in New South Wales today? If we jumped on a plane today and we went to that corner that I mentioned of New South Wales, you've already alluded to the fact that it's the start of the outback, but can you kind of describe the habitat that we're looking at?
Northwestern would be, I mean, I've never been to that part of the state, but it would be arid but tropic in the same sense. So it's closer to the tropics, so it's going to be humid, but it's going to be open eucalypt forests. Probably a lot of farmland. If I remember correctly, I think that's where a lot of pineapples are grown.
Oh yeah.
So it's a lot of farmland, and then there's cattle as well out that way. Yeah, basically. In fact, if I remember correctly, this might. Oh no, that's Queensland. I was going to say there's a place called Texas not too far from there, but
Right.
that's in Queensland. But yeah, I imagine like tropical sclerophyll forest, basically eucalypt forest.
Okay.
Not
Well,
tropical, but humid.
during Procoptodon's time,
Oh, you didn't say Procoptodon's time.
No. I wanted to hear what it's like now because during Procoptodon's time it would have been slightly different. So at that time it would have been semi-arid, or at least where they lived would have been, and it would also have been largely treeless with very little shelter from the elements. And
I mean, I'd like to point out I've never been to that part of the state, so it's a total guess.
That's
so
fair enough. You can
anyone in that part of Queensland, please let us know in the comments.
Yeah,
What it's actually like. Not Queensland.
New South Wales.
New South Wales. Yeah.
Yeah, New South Wales. So yeah, the only real shelter for Procoptodon from the elements would be to hide amongst the sand dunes in many areas of their habitat, particularly when it comes to high winds, which the place would have been known for at the time. There were also softer areas of New South Wales where Procoptodon existed. There was an area that would have been quite similar to what you described, an area with a wetter climate, slightly colder temperatures, and this would have offered some reprieve. This area would also have been enveloped in forests, and grassy plains and savanna would have surrounded that. And then outside of that is where the kind of foreboding dunes would have started.
Foreboding dunes.
Well, I've watched Dune recently, so now dunes are foreboding now.
Fair enough. I mean, there's every chance there might be giant sandworms there. Why not?
They were cool. They were cool. So yeah, a lot of different terrain for them to move over in whatever way we want to argue they moved over in. But it seems like I said, the consensus is they would have walked over this in much the same way that we would have, just maybe a little bit more
tiptoed. Yeah. I'm still seeing it tiptoeing across the place.
Tippy, yeah. So what happened to this incredible kangaroo species, and why aren't they about anymore? The general consensus has this species disappearing about 45,000 years ago. But there is some evidence that they were still present about 18,000 years ago. Yeah, so it's still a long time, but possibly not as long as before. Either way, the eventual extinction of Procoptodon seems to have stemmed from quite a mix of things that have kind of three kind of root causes, shall we say. So it seems a little bit coincidental that humans arrived in Australia some 65 to 50,000 years ago. and that event is followed just 5,000 years later by the proposed kind of extinction of the Procoptodon. So that is a little bit coincidental that would have happened. Pressure on an island species can only end one way, despite what people in Britain might feel about their foxes. With no land borders for Procoptodon to cross from other areas of the world, once it's gone, it would have been very much gone, and there's no neighbouring populations that would expand into their area. So yeah, the Procoptodon would have found its populations across Australia and Kangaroo Island dwindle to nothingness, really. But what exactly is the nature of that human Procoptodon conflict? I just thought I'd pose that question to you quickly to see what you say.
It wasn't me. I didn't do none. What as to what I think happened?
Yeah, what happened between the Procoptodon and the human?
They had a big fight.
Well, we did with emus down there.
Well, that was different. That was a serious war. We don't mention the emu war. Anyway, my thought would be that as with everywhere that humans turned up, we acted as a definite impact on a species. However, I think that would probably be a really harsh one to try and take, considering that there would have been much easier things for people to have killed for food, certainly. Things like, I mean, nothing really screams easy out of any of the Australian fauna.
Yeah, I was
At
gonna
that
say.
point, you've got rhino-sized wombats, you've got giant monitor lizards, as we talked about in the news last week, the demon duck of doom,
Yeah.
which is a giant goose like animal. So not many people are going to want to tackle that. Giant
We tried tackling just a normal
a 9-foot tall kangaroo, and at the same time you've got do you know what, thylacines sound like the easiest thing to have attacked because it's only about the size of a dog.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd have just gone for normal kangaroos personally, but I imagine that humans played an impact on that. But at the same time, you've got an awful lot of climatic change happening anyway. So unlike it's not all one thing. It would be very easy to pin everything on humans. Humans definitely played a part, but I think it's a combination of things, and we may have been the thing that kicked it over the edge, but we may not have put it on the edge.
Well, you've kind of jumped ahead a little bit, so which is good, really. But yeah, the initial thought that the impact that humans had with Procoptodon was hunting. However, to this day, there is no evidence that humans hunted or consumed Procoptodon. There's never found any evidence of that.
I don't think I'd fancy trying to take on a 9-foot kangaroo when there are normal-sized kangaroos
that would kick you.
Yeah,
and the 9-foot one would probably boot you into next Tuesday.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Well, with humans, what seems to have been the case is a little bit less direct. Some researchers theorize that humans exploiting fire to deforest swaths of land is what actually would have caused it. However, there is a kind of another side to this as well. So what would have happened is, in burning a lot of the forest to get rid of it, humans were accidentally encouraging the growth of plants that were far more fire retardant, but also far less nutritionally valuable. However, detractors of this theory propose quite a big flaw, and that is that the type of browse that Procoptodon would have been eating was actually not particularly nutritious in the first place and was fire retardant. So probably not the biggest impact on their diet, because the bulk of it would have remained untouched, really, and unaffected by the fires. So the other major factor is climate change, which you already mentioned. So Procoptodon was quite specific in its selection of drinking establishments. It didn't get the bulk of its moisture from its food, like a lot of animals do. What they did was they actually like to have fresh bodies of water to drink from, like a big water bowl. Now, as the climate has heated up, these freestanding bodies of water would have
Gone.
yeah, gone slowly. So 55,000 years ago, Australia started to experience periodical droughts. However, the wrench in the spokes of this theory, because no theory is perfect, is that the species in actually survived in that region through all the previous droughts without an issue. So even though the droughts seem to start kind of getting more frequent from that period onwards, there was apparently other other droughts beforehand that they cope with perfectly
Just
fine.
sailed through those.
Yeah, so ultimately it's a mixed bag, a lot of different reasons, and the likeliest answer is, as we say, that all of these factors contributed to the disappearance of Procoptodon, which is unfortunate because it is an incredibly impressive kangaroo species that the modern world kind of only just missed out on seeing. But that about wraps up the Procoptodon. There's probably a lot more to say on it, but yeah.
Well, certainly on a lot of Australian megafauna. To be honest, this is always the one that never interested me as much. But like if you said name your favorite Australian megafauna, Procoptodon's actually quite low down the list. I was
fair
always
enough.
Diprotodon, Megalania, Gedionis, even Palakestes, which has gone through so many changes. It used to be considered the marsupial tapir. It now looks nothing like that. Because it superficially the skull looked a bit like a tapir's skull, so they reconstructed it with a snout, like a tapir's.
Right, yeah.
But that's changed now, and so they look quite different. But yeah, Procoptodon.
Well, it's to be fair, it's just a big kangaroo
It is,
with a squash nose.
It's interesting,
and hooves.
but it never really interested me anyway. I mean, it's Thylacolea we've covered, Diprotodon we've covered, Megalania we've covered. I will do Genionis at some point. We've now got a good selection of the sort of narrow court fauna,
Yeah. I've got to say, looking into this species, it's interesting. It might be a bias, but I prefer the kangaroos we got around today. I quite
Fair
like
enough.
them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think when you've got Thylacoleo running around out there, it is difficult to top that. And like you say,
Definitely.
Diprotodon.
Yeah.
But if you two were bored by my creature feature,
if you two are a kangaroo,
yeah, if you're a Procoptodon that is now thoroughly offended by Gareth's words,
well, you're extinct. So yeah. But no, they're interesting enough animals.
Half an hour into a creature feature. That's actually a species I'm not interested in at all.
Oh, do you know what? The thing about them that does interest me is the locomotion aspect.
Yeah,
this seems so. I still can't get my head around a kangaroo that's 9 foot tall, not hopping, because you just think kangaroos and that's the way that they move. Every member of the kangaroo family, from the smallest little betong right the way up to the largest red kangaroo, they hop in one form or another. But this 9 foot tall one, I get the inability to do it. That seems fine. It's just this weird. The walk must be obscure. I'd love to see, and I don't think I've ever seen like an animation that anyone's made of like a, how it could have walked or something. Although, interestingly enough, I believe there is a documentary series coming out, and any of our Australian listeners or viewers, let us know, because I vaguely remember seeing something saying that they are doing the ABC are doing a like a Australian prehistoric mammal documentary
that
series.
would be cool.
So I wonder if that will turn up here in the UK at some point.
That would be cool to watch.
Yeah.
My thing is, I can wrap my head around like a 9 foot kangaroo with hooves walking. That bit's not trouble for me. what is a trouble for me, and maybe this is because they didn't need to do this because they were so big and probably pretty brutal if you compare them to the Reds.
Yeah.
But if they were spooked and had to run away, that's the bit that gets me. I think
That's what I mean. Yeah.
running
Very
away,
hard to
like,
picture them running
yeah.
like some sort of. In fact, I wonder if there's someone followed behind with like a xylophone going.
Would it be like a plodding?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. But
That's the part that fascinates me more than the actual animal itself in a weird way, is the locomotion aspect of it. But
yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah, it was all right.
You're gonna have to apologise to Andrew Pascal now that you just poo-pooed his creature.
No, I like it. You're the one that said you're the one that waited to the end of the creature feature to tell me that you weren't interested in the
No, I
creature.
like them. I just don't rate them as highly as some of the other Australian megafauna. I think I'm biased towards Thylacoleo and a lot of the other Narracourt fauna.
When it comes to Australian fauna, I do find myself leaning towards the carnivorous animals because they're so weird. You don't have big cats and big dogs there. You've got Thylacoleo,
There was a
Phyllothene.
carnivorous kangaroo as well at one point in the river sleigh fauna.
I didn't know that. I'll look into that. But then you've got your crocs.
Yeah.
You've got
There were some bizarre crocodiles in Australia.
and then dingoes. I know, like, dingoes don't seem interesting to people. Dingoes are fast. Their history, where they've come from to be in Australia in the form that they're in, is very interesting. I think maybe their history is actually, to be fair, maybe their history is more interesting than what they actually are. But still, they are fascinating. And then after the well, I suppose they're still carnivorous animals. The snakes in Australia are wicked.
Well, there was a giant python-like creature, the I think it was Wanambi. There's another Narracourt one. Basically, there's a couple of different places where there's lots of Australian megafauna have been preserved in pretty good conditions, and that's one of them. But yeah. Well, should we? Well, I'd say tiptoe, not bound into our emails for this week.
Let's do it. Let's do it, Skip.
Oh God.
Sorry, Australia.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email. Right, well, we're into this week's emails. We're going to start things off with last week's question, which was, what is your question for us? As I thought, we might only get a few questions into us, but the two that we have, well, one of them
is another attempt at embarrassing me about how I've injured myself in the past. Thanks, brother.
So we'll leave you to hunt that one down if you want to read that. The answer is C, I believe.
It is C.
To his particular question. But we will leave that one out, and we'll go to Spencer Seams, who's asked us, what are your favourite scavenger species? And do you plan on covering more vulture and condor species on the show in the future? Well, first off, we do plan on covering them more in the future. Annoyingly, I don't think there's any currently in our rota. So when we work out our episode lists, we basically got the year planned. And
I think we've got a little bit over a year planned now.
Yes.
So we could add some into next year.
Both of us have got two very large documents of just animal names that we've sat through and gone, ooh, I want to do that one. I want to do that one. I want to do that one. And we then have to sort of pare down what we've got and try and mix it up a bit. So it's not all the same, because I'd end up talking probably, I've done an awful lot of birds this year and an awful lot of New Zealand species as well. So yeah, it means that we've got to plan things out, but I currently don't think we've got any scavenger vultures or condors on the list. There are.
Stick around with us for a year and we'll put it on next year.
They will, yeah. I think we'll definitely have to try and fit them in.
Or join our Patreon,
Ah, yes.
and then you can suggest it.
Which we have, like I say, those who've done that on Patreon, that overwrites what we'd had previously
Yeah,
in the lineup.
we prioritize those ones.
Yeah, which is always fun actually, because it means sometimes we've got to come up with a bit of more of an in-depth, out of our wheelhouse sort of situation than we were ready for.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, what's your favorite scavenger species?
I'm struggling to think, and I'm also struggling to truly define scavenger, because if it's I would try to define it for the sake of this question as an animal, a species that takes from a resource that has already been that was someone else's claim.
Yeah,
Because otherwise you could go down the route of
most animals that eat meat.
Yeah, well, not just meat though, because surely you could consider dung beetles a scavenger, because they're taking waste from another animal.
That's like very much at the other end of
That's
things.
what I mean. Like you have to be careful how you define this.
I think we could say it in the terms of, if there's a dead animal and they are picking at it and eating some of it,
yeah.
they may not have necessarily made the kill, but they're quite happy to eat some of it.
Yeah.
Shall I give you more of a second? I've got 3 in mind.
You have a go, because I've got some that are very close, I feel.
So, Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, that was one of them.
Brilliant scavenger and a unique animal in itself, and we've covered them in the past. Lammergeier vulture, a bird that eats solid bone and just looks utterly awesome with its coloring on its face.
Yeah.
In fact, that is one that I will quite happily add to the list, is Lammergeier vulture. I will put that one in there. And then the third one, spotted hyena. I just love hyenas. I think they're really cool animals.
Yeah, see, hyena was going to be on my list. I kicked it off because we always think of like the hyena-lion relationship as lion as the predator, hyena as the
Oh, no,
scavenger.
they're both as bad as each other.
Yeah, there's a lot of chopping and changing between them. So,
and I think it was the.
Then that brings into question, like, if you can consider that a scavenger,
You
is
could
the
consider
lion
yeah.
scavenger?
I think if you the latest Attenborough series, Mammals, there's a really good bit in that about hyenas and a massive family of hyenas working together to I think what do they bring down, a buffalo in that, and they're you know, active predators in that, but they're also quite happy to steal from other animals, because if you can, why not? You know, don't have to expend energy. You can't think of any?
No, there is a couple. So I am going to keep Tasmanian devil on there. I'm gonna have Lammergeier vulture was on there, because I don't want to have 2 the same as you. I'm going to kick Lammergeier vulture off and put griffin vulture in.
Well, we've already done the griffin vulture.
I think they're wicked.
Yeah.
You know, I can't remember the name of the species, but I think, to be honest, it's probably almost all of those deep sea dwelling crabs that when an animal has been killed, like
a whale fall,
sperm whale, or a giant squid that was locked in combat with the sperm whale, and it makes its way down to the bottom eventually. It's those crabs that come along and clean it up at the bottom of the
and all the giant isopods as well.
Yeah, I just think that it's a bit of a cheat, really, but that scavenger ecosystem down there is really cool, and probably something we should explore in a creature feature.
Maybe not in a submarine. I'm not so up for that. But yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah. Well, there you go. We do intend on having some in the future, and
I'll definitely cover hyena.
I
love hyena.
Hyenas are very cool.
Very clever animals.
Yeah. But yes, that was last week's question. This week's question that we have for you is based on the news story that a new fish has been named after Sauron, the Eye of Sauron, because it has a very similar marking on its body. Is what fictional character or setting or sort of piece of pop culture would you want a new species named after? Aaron, I mean, I'm assuming you're probably quite happy with anything Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, or Jurassic Park related.
Yeah, pretty much. But my immediate one comes to my immediate thought goes to naming a new species of mosquito after Donald Gennaro, the lawyer from Jurassic Park,
Right.
because of that line. The only one I've got on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer.
Fair enough. I like that. That's good.
And the guy that says it has a mosquito in his cane, so that's where my thought goes to.
Yeah, that's actually really well thought out. It's a heck of a lot better than what I was thinking.
What were you thinking?
I don't know. I there's so many things that you could have stuff named after, but maybe some sort of like uh,
There's
uh
got to be some sort of colony of predatory insects as well that exist in desert like habitats that you could call, like, I don't know, like something Tuscany eye. You know, like Tuscan
yeah,
raven.
yeah, okay. I mean, a lot of these have already been named as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that have already got names from stuff like that. You know what, I'm gonna say I'd like to see something named after any sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger character, purely because he's such an iconic actor. You know what, I'm gonna go with some sort of primate
Yeah.
that's particularly good at being in the trees. Name it after Predator. So you can say it's in the trees, watching and waiting.
As soon as you said about Arnold Schwarzenegger, the character related to Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Dutch.
I thought, yes, I thought of a new species of chameleon, so it can disappear, and call it Dutch or Dutch eye.
There you go. So yeah, you you could have quite a bit of
And
fun.
you could also say, stick around. Knock, knock.
Yeah, basically you've just got like a parrot that only says Arnold Schwarzenegger lines.
Mm,
Just found. I mean, if
want
it
that
did
power.
that, you know, yeah. So
Let off some steam.
oh god, it's just going to descend into us doing bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions.
A
But anyway,
polar bear called Victor Freeze.
okay, yeah. I'm surprised you don't want a bat named after Batman.
Well, he was an Arnold Schwarzenegger, was he?
No, but you just made me think of that now, you know. Like
The
the Adam West bat or something, you know.
I'm
It's a
sure there's an
bat that
Adam West
goes.
species. There's got to be an Adam West species somewhere.
If there isn't, there needs to be one. But you can get in contact with us about that on our Facebook page. Also, you can let us know in the comments. In YouTube, we can do the whole comment thing. So
Yeah.
feel free to put your suggestions for a name for a pop culture species down in the comments below, and also on our Facebook page where that will be coming out.
Mm.
But you can also get in contact with us in other ways. In fact, one of them is by becoming a Patreon. Aaron, tell us about our Patreon.
That's right. Every week we like to give a little love back to our patrons by shouting out the names of our wonderful supporters over there. These are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, and their names will come up on the screen as I say this: Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Sorry for like nearly stuttering there. Guys, your financial contributions mean the world to us, and they are actively helping us to improve the podcast content. So it's taken us to places like Lyme Regis for the Fossil Festival this year, which wasn't perfect in terms of streaming with the internet and stuff and knowing what to film and being there for the wrong tide times. But as Gareth said, we've learned from it. It's helping us to make changes to the studio that we now find ourselves in, which has also, along with your support, it's kind of what's the word? It's facilitated us making a jump from audio only format to having the audio podcast, but also having our YouTube video go out and having the YouTube channel there. So yeah, we really can't thank you enough. Now, We appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and the support you offer us through listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing. And by the way, commenting too. You guys literally can comment "Hi guys," and we'll comment back. We try and be as interactive as we can be. But yeah, we appreciate all of that. But if you feel that we've earned it and you're thinking of becoming a Patreon supporter and you want one of your vultures or condors covered, then do check out our Patreon. There are two formats. There's two kind of tiers. One is the nature nerd tier, and the other is the animal advocate tier. But yeah, I once again, thank you very much. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah, and money isn't everything, but you can, like Aaron said, get in contact with us in a variety of different ways and help us out immensely, whether that is liking, subscribing, or commenting on whatever platform you're listening or watching us on, interacting with us on all of our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. We're all over the place. We're spread all over the place, like jam on a wall. I don't know. Well, that's the analogy I'm going with, and I'm sticking with it. Much like jam on a wall. But yeah, you can get in contact with us, and that helps out immensely. Rate us, like us, ring a bell, all those different things. Whistles. That's a word I'm inventing this week. Whizzle.
Bells and whistles
to go with the jam on the wall. But that helps us out immensely. And yeah, that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So big thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much. And remember, jam on the wall is better on your toast.
Yep, without the wall.
No, better than being on your toast. Jam's horrible.
Jam's horrible.
Oh, yeah, I can't stand jam. Jam and Marmite. Why do people put that on things?
Not jam and Marmite.
No, just jam,
jam
and Marmite, both of them individually.
What's wrong with jam? How have we gone this long and we've not realised that you don't like jam?
I have said it before when I've been critiquing other people's scone things, and then I have admitted that actually I don't care because I don't use jam.
Oh my
I
god!
just have a scone with a big dollop of clotted cream on it.
Right. Well, put that in the comments if you want to interact with us. Is how wrong Aaron is when it comes to
that. Was a tangent.
Anyway, let's go from the tangent. So thank you very much, Aaron, for revealing that weird thing, and thanks to you at home for listening. And we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Jam sucks.
I don't know you anymore.
One does not simply hop on hooves.